SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, in the Element Wealth studio, along with Will East, in for Rhino today. We'll be guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Friday, y'all. As Rhino would say, morning, Will.
Morning, and no rain so far.
I know, man. Good grief. We live in a rainforest around here.
It is right. You got to see my backyard, Gerard. It's a jungle.
Crazy.
Every day it rains around the same time at my house. I mean, you can set your watch to it.
That's kind of what happens in Florida. You know, in Florida, it's like between 3 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's just guaranteed.
Yeah, just guaranteed to rain.
Well, yeah.
It's been that way at my house, and so I haven't been able to mow my yard, so my yard is looking pretty rough right now.
I hear you. Well, it looks like, at least for now, we're looking at a lower chance of precipitation in the forecast for the next few days. So maybe we'll be spared a little bit from all the wet stuff. Man, I haven't checked it, but surely we're way ahead of our annual rainfall year to date at this point.
Got to be.
Absolutely got to be.
Yeah.
And I don't remember it being quite as wet in May. The month of May, typically a very pleasant month. Yeah. Kind of reminds me of October in the fall. Moderate temperatures, bright blue skies, sunshine, little rain. You may have a few days, but it seemed like it rained every day in Maine.
April showers bring May flowers.
Right.
But this year's just been rain.
That hadn't been the case. So, well, hopefully we will get a little relief from that for a while, and that'll be a good thing. So the president says, you got 2 weeks, Iran. He came out of his meetings yesterday, huddled up with his advisory team, and that's the decision from the White House. You need to unconditionally surrender, right? You got 2 weeks to do it. Now, in being the master negotiator, chess player that he is, he certainly didn't offer any sort of or else consequences. I don't blame him. I wouldn't either. Let him think about it. But that's what he came out with. And, of course, he has access with his team there to lots of information. We don't. So we have to accept that his decision is grounded in the data he consumed from his team. Simple as that. I think that most people in this country would say we don't want boots on the ground. We don't want to spill any American blood. I agree. Absolutely. With them. We shouldn't. I don't think it's even necessary. Now, Rhino and I had a discussion about this after the show yesterday. He shared that he thinks there's probably special forces and Navy SEALs that would jump at the chance to invade and take out these nuclear facilities in Iran and whomever is, responsible for guarding, managing, whatever. It's his belief, and I don't think I'm misrepresenting our conversation yesterday after the show, it's his belief that they probably already have a plan right now for that.
They always keep contingency plans.
Big time. And, of course, you know that they know everything that might stand in their way and affect such a mission and the risks associated with it. And you'd have to believe that between the United States and Israel, we could mitigate those risks. Because if you think about Osama bin Laden, we didn't lose any people as part of that. I think we may have lost a helicopter or something.
We lost a stealth helicopter.
Yeah. But, you can rebuild helicopters.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. We're just speculating, just having a conversation yesterday. We'll see where all that goes. But at this point, the president has not announced any definitive plans, just that you got 2 weeks. I like it. Now, I don't know that I've seen a response from the Ayatollah to the president's ultimatum. Have you? I don't think I've seen a response at this point.
I don't. I think are we still waiting on the big surprise?
I think that's right. I don't think, unless the surprise was you got 2 weeks. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think if he said anything, I haven't seen it, but
yeah.
Man, how quickly did this go? I mean, when did all this start? Tuesday?
Yeah.
Something like that?
A couple of weeks ago? Wasn't long. Yeah.
One minute you're an Iranian general sitting in your penthouse just enjoying the good life. The next moment your country's facing an unconditional surrender.
No doubt. And, of course, the sad thing is I don't think that the positions, the will, the whims of the regime in charge aligns with the people of Iran. I sure would like to see the country return to the era of the Shah, where it looked like Western culture.
They were pretty progressive.
Very. And we had a great trading relationship with them back in the 70s before the regime toppled the Shah and took over and radicalized, set them back.
In fact, it's kind of what happened here in the United States. They, back in the 70s, they instituted, or maybe it was even in the 60s, they instituted mandatory education.
That's right.
Before that, they, I don't know what they had, but the Shah instituted mandatory education, so everybody had to start going to school. Then you have higher education. And what happened when people got into academia and stuff? They got radicalized.
Yeah, absolutely. We have our own brand of radicalism here in this country. It's called higher ed, right?
Isn't that funny how that kind of happens?
Locally, I wanted to get this out there, Will. We're sad to learn that Chief of Pearl Police Dean Scott passed away last night. He'd been on this program. He was a real committed combater of human trafficking. And when he came on the show a couple of times, that's what he discussed. I learned so much about the scourge of human trafficking from Chief Scott. And you wouldn't think that there would be a lot of examples of that in Rankin County and Pearl. Fact is, it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's under our noses. And the chief was a huge point in the effort to eliminate this scourge in our state, in his community, in our country. And, of course, Pearl, Rankin County, being here in central Mississippi at the intersection of interstates, east and west 20, north and south 55, just a lot of travel through the area that involves human trafficking. But what really he taught me, and I think our listeners, was how much human trafficking is perpetrated by family members of the victims. That blew me away. I just didn't think about that. I don't think the average person realizes how prevalent that is, that there would be family members who traffic, especially youngsters, minors, for money, drugs, etc. And he also informed us, Will, without naming names or pointing fingers, that there's corruption. I know we're shocked at that, but there were members of law enforcement who were engaged and complicit. But he did a great job of not only serving as the chief of police for the city of Pearl in protecting and keeping crime down in the city of Pearl, but again, fighting this human trafficking that flowed through the city of Pearl and exposing that. He will be greatly missed. He, I think, was a consummate law enforcement officer. We need more of Dean Scotts in the law enforcement world, so may he rest in peace. Folks, we're stepping aside for a break. At 11:20 today, it's Kelly Bennett, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. At 12:05, Ricky Cole, former chairman of the Mississippi Democratic Party. We'll get his thoughts on the current state of the party in Mississippi and also at the national level. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
No more. I'm a fool to do your dirty work. Oh yeah. I don't want to do your dirty work no more. I'm a fool to do your dirty work. Oh yeah.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, so it's a little different version than the recorded version you got there. Van Morrison, Brown Eyed Girl.
You know, I think the version that you typically hear was the old mono version, and I think this was remastered or something. You know, a lot of older songs, like pre-65, are mono.
Mono, because there was no stereo.
There was no stereo.
Right.
So they sound a little different, and then you get the stereo era, and things change. It's about, I say 65. I don't know if that's the exact year, but it seems like that. I love oldies, as you know. In fact, last night I spent way too much time going through my playlist and redefining it, and I found some songs. I'm going to try to add some in today, maybe, but I found some stuff that I hadn't heard, and it's been years. I grew up listening to oldies radio. It was a station out of Amory. I believe it's still there. And they used to do this thing called, I believe it's called Dave's Diner at night. And it was this guy. And I thought as a kid, again, this is 10-year-old me, I thought it was an actual diner in Amory, Mississippi, where they had the radio on or had the microphone on, and they were broadcasting this music because it sounded like a diner. And he had he had characters in there, but it turns out it was a radio show and it was all fake. But they used to play the great music. They'd do the Beatles buffet where they would play two Beatles songs in a row, and all that kind of stuff. I love that stuff.
So while you were talking, I just looked at it, and stereo invented in the 30s, but didn't become the dominant format for music until the late 60s.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah. I said 65, so maybe after that.
Of course, who could forget? I remember as a kid in the 60s, that would be the big promotional slogan associated with any new musical contact in stereo.
Yeah, in stereo. It was like, whoa. It's kind of like NHD, a few years ago. Oh, wow, I can get it in high definition. I can get it in stereo.
Right. With the needle on the two tracks there, separating the sound. So... And the reason I asked is I recognized the slight nuance differences between the version you played and the actual recorded. If you go out and play it on any of the streaming services, because the house band features that tune, and among its 18 that we have selected to learn and play. And
that's one of the greatest songs of all time.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yeah. I'll tell you, our guys do pretty good at that. It's a little tricky on the drums, so you'll know I've had to spend a lot of time learning the licks. It's got some tricky hi-hat beats in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty close to having it completely down, perfect. I may miss a couple here and there. The average person wouldn't know it. I would, and be upset with myself. I missed some sort of flam or something.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. It's a great song to play, and that the crowd will love that because everybody can sing it. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
It's very recognizable, and everybody knows the lyrics. So
it's got to be one of the most played songs of all time.
No doubt. And we'll be playing that at the Neshoba County Fair. We're doing a show on Thursday, and then the house band, of which, of course, I'm a member, we kick off right after the show, before the races start.
Oh, really? And
then we're playing some tunes between the races as well. So I got to go from the set there on Founder Square over to the stage where everything will be set up, and we're going to dig right into it, start playing music.
So you've got 18 songs in your repertoire.
That's right. Yep.
What's the most difficult one?
Yeah, let me say this. There's the most fun one, and then to play on the drums, and then that I really enjoy playing, and then there's a couple, I'm looking at the list just to make sure, that I would say are tricky on the drums. They're not, it's not that they're difficult, just physically, but just knowing when to do what, that's about half the battle. I would say Take It to the Limit is one we're doing.
Eagles.
That's not really hard necessarily on the drums. Again, it's when to do what, because there's lots of different beats and sets of timing and just alternation between the hi-hat and the bass and the toms. It's a little difficult. It's a little tricky. I've had to spend a lot of time. So that's on the bell, is what we call it, on the cymbal here, that ding, 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 ding. And then that's the bass to do with the bass guitar.
All right.
Here we go. Hear that little roll right there? I got that. I got that on the snare.
Okay.
But so what's hard? That's not hard. It's just the different sections of the song. That same sort of chorus he does differently. So it's not like repeated. The drum part I'm talking.
Yeah.
So of course Don Henley, unbelievable drummer, and could sing very well.
Was he singing that?
Not in that one.
Not that song, but like Hotel California, he sings.
Yes.
Yeah.
And others as well, right? But super talented to play the drums and sing lead vocals. I can't do it. I can tell you that.
So that's the most. You said that's the most.
That's the hardest one. Yeah.
What's the most fun one?
Red, White, and Blue by Leonard Skinner.
All right.
Love playing that on the drums, and I've practiced it 1,000 times because I want to make sure I get that one perfect. And it's complicated. It's got a lot of stuff, but it's just fun. And I think the reason I was able to get that one down quicker. Yeah, and that's, what's his name, Van Zandt?
Yeah.
Smoking camels and drinking domestic blues. That's the lyrics there. But, so this is more consistent with the music I learned to play the drums with, the more classic rock.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I was able to pick it up quicker. Take It to the Limit, and a lot of the Eagles tunes are more jazzy drums in nature. That's just Henley style. And I'm a more solid sort of style drummer. And so is the drummer and Leonard Skinner on this tune.
Yeah.
But there's some instrumental parts where there's a lot of drum, tom, snare, tom, and cymbal work, a lot of crashes on the cymbals. Really fun in that song, by the way. And there's some breaks where you come out of the break with a really solid snare, bass, crash cymbal at the same time. It's kind of neat. So I know I'm getting into the weeds on drumming, but it's fun. It really is. And our guys are really good at this. And so we've got Noah Sanford, Representative Sanford, on the keyboards, and Representative Steve Lott on lead guitar. And that's a song that really features both, because that's the style of Leonard Skinner's music. If you think about all their music, you always hear lots of great keyboard work, obviously lots of great lead guitar work. And they're both really good at their parts. And lots of great, can't leave them out, the bass work, and, of course, the vocalist. But from an instrumental perspective, it's Representative Chuck Blackwell on the bass. He's really good. All these guys are good, I'm telling you. They cover me up. I'm a bad drummer, so good instrumentals throughout the band cover up bad drumming. So kind of neat.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're going to have fun. But I like playing that song, and I think the crowd will enjoy us because it gets really going, it gets really upbeat, and I'm going crazy on the cymbals, that kind of stuff. So,
but no Moby Dick from Led Zeppelin yet. No 10-minute drum solo.
No, I can't do that. No, I could, but I don't think people would be impressed.
It makes you appreciate I remember Tommy Lee of Motley Crue. He would do that thing. Do you remember this where he would? I can't remember which song it was, but he'd be playing the drums, and then all of it, he was on a platform.
Yeah.
In a cage.
Yeah.
And it would rise up, and then it would spin. Now, imagine what all you're doing.
Couldn't do it.
There in the Neshoba County heat.
Couldn't do it.
In the red clay, but he's doing it. He's on a platform, and it starts spinning 360 degrees.
I remember that.
I think it even goes, and they strapped him in, right?
Yeah.
They had to strap him in. And I think I read somewhere one time that his drumsticks, he had these big magnets on the drumsticks. Because, you think about it, you have a spare set of drumsticks, right?
Yeah, always.
In case one of them breaks or whatever. Well, what happens when you go upside down? They'll fall out.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
So he had these magnets that would stick so that he could pull them up, and they wouldn't fall out while he's drumming upside down.
Well, there was a time period where using those lifts in concerts, rock concerts, was popular. I went to one back in the 80s at Baton Rouge on the campus of LSU. Excuse me, it was Elton John. And they had him on one of those deals. And, man, that thing lifted up. It was going all around the crowd. He's up there on the piano and at the mic singing. That's when the album The One was released. You remember the One was a famous Elton John song. This back in the 80s. And he did that up. It was great. Rocket Man, it's perfect for that. So we're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Hey, this is Bob, and if you're
the SuperTalk app.
Welcome to our shop
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Well, you say you got the blues, you got holes in both of your shoes. Yeah, you're feeling alone and confused. You got to keep on smiling, just keep on smiling. Yeah, you're about to go insane, 'cause your woman's playing games, and she says that you're to blame. You try to keep on smiling, just keep on smiling, keep on smiling.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. That's another one in the set. That's a lot of fun to play on the drums, too, especially because it gets kicked off with the drums.
Yeah.
Got
Wet Willie.
4 little sequences, that's right. Georgia Satellites also recorded it. I'm not sure who was first, but we're playing the Wet Willie version. It's slightly different, and it's got a great harmonica riff in it. And I was just telling Will on the break, we played that song when I went to the coast and participated in Mayor Billy Hughes' charity event. Billy, a great drummer, by the way, has a great band. You know who's in the band with him is Major Johnny Pullis.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sings, plays a little rhythm guitar. Really talented. They got a great band. And so Billy's also a fabulous harmonica player. I was telling Will that the night before we were practicing, and that was not one of my songs. But the celebrity drummer, other celebrity drummer, I won't say who it is, who was supposed to play it, I could tell he didn't know it. It's not that he couldn't play, he just didn't know the song. And so when the practice was over, I approached Billy and him and said, I actually do know this one if you want me to play it, because Billy had to take over on the drums, and therefore we lost his talent on the harmonica. And they said, and Billy said, well, it's up to you guys. And so this other drummer said, please, Gerard, play this one. And I would do the same if I was assigned a song that I didn't know. And so while he was playing, we switched real quick on the drums. I got up there, we played the song. Billy was able to do the harmonica, who just knocked it out. Billy did. And there is a harmonica piece in there that makes the song. It's what makes it unique. It's what makes Wet Willie a unique kind of country rock band. And kind
of southern rock.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I finished and I said, I nailed that one. I mean, and when you don't do well, you of course self-evaluate, like, yeah, I missed some in there. This one I nailed in front of a bunch of people. And I was telling Will that I was worried about making sure Billy was happy with it. I didn't want to, mess up. And the other musicians on the stage, these guys are professional musicians. They're not the amateur that I am. And the lead guitarist was right in front of me. The bassist was right next to me. And during the song, they were looking at me, shaking their head, which told me, okay, you're doing good. We like this. And which I felt good about. I was on the right track. And when it was over, Billy turned around. He was up in the front, just completing his harmonica solo as part of the song. And he turned around and said, Gerard Gibert on the drums to the crowd. So I said, okay, I didn't mess up for Billy here. I didn't want to mess his deal up. What a bunch of fun that is. So I'm going back to my middle school, high school, college days here. Hadn't played in front of people until about 3 weeks ago down in Gulfport. Great cause, by the way. They do a great job. Centennial Plaza. Hats off to Mayor Billy Hughes, Mayor Fofo Gillich in Biloxi. I played 2 songs with Jay Willis, the mayor of Pascagoula. He sung 2. And then Transportation Commissioner Charles Busby. He sang that song we just played. And he did it great, by the way. Knocked it out of the park. His voice is perfect for that.
Yeah.
So it was Transportation Commissioner Busby, Mayor Billy Hughes, and little old me with these other great musicians, professional musicians, playing that song. So come out and check us out, the Neshoba County Fair. Be sure to get there to come by the SuperTalk tent that's right there on Founders Square. We'll be doing the show live as we always do on Thursday. And then get ready for the music, 1 o'clock. The House Band. What a great name that is.
That is a great name.
Yeah. So Representative Dan Eubanks, Representative Lance Varner, Representative Joe Tubb, also known as Bubba, Representative Chuck Blackwell, Steve Lott, Noah Sanford. And because there's not a drummer in the House, I got recruited into that role. I've interviewed all of them, so I guess that qualifies, right? We're going to have fun with that. So, a lot of fun. On the ceasefire text line, by the way, that's 601-879-4395. From the 662, would Congress have to approve the U.S. getting involved? This is a controversial issue, of course, and people come down on different sides of that. Technically speaking, no, the Congress is supposed to declare war. That's the strictest reading of the Constitution that would say the president, this president, or any other president would have to go to Congress to declare war. But, Congress hasn't technically declared war, Will, since World War II. Hard to believe.
Yeah, because Vietnam was never officially it's a conflict.
Right.
Well, Korea
as well.
Vietnam, conflict.
So we did pass a law post 9/11 that extended the power to the president to mobilize military action if there's a threat of terrorism. I don't remember the exact name of the law, but that and it's supposed to be connected to 9/11. Now, the left is mad about the prospect of Trump taking military action without congressional approval. And they're saying that Iran was not involved in 9/11. Man, I don't know. And I don't know if we'll ever figure out exactly who all the players were. But the bottom line is it doesn't appear. Now, there is a move in Congress spearheaded by Democrats, but there are some Republicans as well that are trying to rein in the White House and prevent the president from taking any action without congressional approval at this point. I don't know if there is the will in the Congress, because it would require Republicans, of course, who control both houses, to pass legislation that somehow would I guess, amend the current powers conferred based on this post-9/11 legislation. I don't know if that's got any legs, if it can get through. But that's the complicated answer to the question, is that the president is relying on this post-9/11 legislation to, again, deploy our military resources and to actually attack and take action. But you're right. It wouldn't be considered war. It would be considered some sort of military action to mitigate the threat of terrorism. Now, when you got an Ayatollah and a regime that says that Israel is little Satan and the U.S. is big Satan, they've made no bones about it. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, and then they want to come after us. I would construe that as a threat of terrorism. I'll tell you what I have concerns about, and I'm sure a lot of other Americans do as well. Who the heck came across our borders the last 4 years under Biden? Millions of people. It's highly likely that among them are terrorists that are connected to this Iranian regime. Mm-hmm. And my concern is if we and I guarantee you this is a factor. And I'm just guessing, but it's my opinion of a guarantee that the president and his advisors are thinking about this. I believe, have information, you know they do, that we don't, that may suggest to them, hey, if we went into Iran and took action, somehow the Ayatollah may order bad guys inside our borders to take some sort of action that would be terrorist in nature, and that would be a concern. I mean, I am concerned about that.
And we know that there were threats against President Trump himself from actors in the U.S. sponsored by Iran. That's according to the FBI. Wasn't it interesting that Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz got into it?
Man, they tied up.
I mean, there's a certain wing of conservatives that they're going all out defending Iran.
I know. I was shocked.
Yeah,
I agree. I guess I do understand it, but I don't agree with it. Man, Mo says Gerard is unlikely as the plan will ever be needed. There are plans for the invasion of Canada and Mexico. Well, I think that makes sense, Mose, given their adjacency and proximity to this country.
You never know what can happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you want to prepare for everything. Preparation is not necessarily limited just preparing for something you're going to do. It's preparing for stuff you hope never happens. As a private pilot, nothing along the lines of a commercial pilot, but you know the way I describe pilot training, Will, is you spend most of your time training to do things you don't want ever to happen. Flying an airplane's easy. Knowing what to do when bad stuff happens, that's kind of hard. We're coming right back with the final segment of Hour 1 on Middays. Kelly Bennett from the news department at 11:20.
For all your glass. Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
used to practice that one. I think I was like in the 8th or 9th grade. I don't know the year it was introduced, but that was a really different departure from typical Elvis music.
Yeah.
You didn't have that sort of classic 50s, sort of 60s beat. That was a more modern, I guess, song with the licks and stuff there, you can tell. Kind of upbeat on the hi-hat. The common sort of beat on the hi-hat back before that era was a double. If you think about a lot of music, that's kind of the I think it's quarter notes, if I'm not mistaken. Again, I'm not a big music guy in that respect. But that one was a more classic, more aligned with typical rock, which is just a steady quarter or 16 note on the hi-hat.
Yeah.
And it was kind of fun. But nonetheless, Jerry in Pontotoc says, I used to listen to Dave's Diner. They'd play Johnny Rivers' Post Side of Town.
Yeah.
A great tune.
Yeah, they used to have, they had these characters. And again, this guy made all this stuff up. He had sound effects. Essentially, he had a board of sound effects, and it sounded like a diner. And he would always say, "There's Officer Mahoney over there guarding the donuts, and the lady with the waitress with the coffee." And he would always do a food song, which was always. And you would have to sometimes you would have to guess what the food theme might be in the lyrics. It might be with the artist's name, or something like that.
Johnny Rivers, I believe, from Baton Rouge, if I'm not mistaken.
Johnny Rivers.
I think so. Great tune, great voice, great musician, made a lot of great records, of course. So, having fun with that, though. Also on the C Spire text line, amazing that Handley could play drums and sing like that. Yeah, there's a handful of them. Phil Collins comes to mind. Was fantastic at it, of course.
Oh, Johnny Rivers did Secret Agent, man.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, man. And that's because he recorded that, Will, back, in the 60s, I think.
64.
Yeah, and it was really popular television shows about sort of espionage and secret agents and covert operations.
Danger Man.
Yeah.
There was Danger Man. That was the British series. Then I guess there was a...
Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah.
The Saint.
The Saint. My dad
Mission Impossible.
My dad was a big fan of this show called The Prisoner. Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
The Prisoner was Patrick... I believe it was Patrick McGowan, but he was a former secret agent. He got decommissioned, basically, and he put on this island, and he was always trying to escape. It only lasted for like a season or two. Yeah. But when the Sci-Fi Channel debuted way back when, I think I've told this story before, but we had one of those illegal satellites, Gerard. The big, huge
big one,
dish.
Big as this studio.
Yeah, and it had a descrambler, and so we could get channels from all over. And I remember the Sci-Fi Channel came out.
Yeah.
And it was really fun because they would show these old 60s shows, and my dad would, he would watch them, and so that's where I picked all this stuff up. But yeah, The Prisoner was one of his favorites. It was a very weird kind of 60s psychedelic type show. It was only on for like a season or two, but it was the same guy who played Danger Man over in England. Yeah,
my mother loved The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Man from U.N.C.L.E. was a really good one.
Really good.
The Avengers. Remember the Avengers?
I do remember that. I like Mission Impossible. I thought that was kind of neat.
Bill Cosby, right?
Mission Impossible?
Wasn't he on Mission Impossible?
No, there was a black guy that kind of favors him, and his name escapes me. Either his real name was Greg or his character name was Greg. But he was like the gadget guy on Mission Impossible. He's the one that did all the electronics and all the snooping devices and wires and all that sort of stuff. That was his role.
Yeah.
Are you looking at that? Peter Graves was kind of the head guy, and that was, I want to say there's some relationship with him to some other famous actor, but, was it the guy who played Matt Dillon? Are they brothers or something?
They were brothers.
That's right. Yeah.
James Arness. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the black guy, though, that, again, does kind of look like Bill Cosby, but
Greg Morris.
Hey, it was Greg, yeah. And so I had that right. That's his real name, right? That wasn't his character name.
That's his real name.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Great show. But that gave rise, I would say, to the popularity of that subject, and thus Johnny Rivers capitalized on that and wrote the Secret Agent Man tune.
Secret Agent.
Pretty good.
Oh, it's a great song.
Yeah, good stuff. Lori and Goche says, try Smoking by Boston. That was a fantastic tune. That was, of course, on their first album, Boston, introduced in 1976. And I'm telling you, when I was at Ole Miss, there wasn't a dorm room or a fraternity or sorority room on campus that didn't have that album playing on it all the time, man. We wore it out. Or the 8-tracks in your car. We didn't have CDs, of course, and didn't have cassettes yet. Had to have the 8-tracks in your car. A lot of fun. It's top of the hour. That means it's time for Fox News and SuperTalk News. We're coming back. We got 2 hours left. Stay with us.
Your hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president. And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. I've been home in a year, I hope she holds on a little longer.
What a great tune that is. Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays in the Element Wealth studio on, as Rhino would say, Friday, y'all. That, by the way, is the original drummer in Journey when they recorded that. That's Ainsley Dunbar. He was replaced by Steve Smith, who did most of the popular songs most people are aware of. And then Steve was replaced by Dean Castronovo. Then Steve came back, and now it's Dean again. But that's Ainsley Dunbar. You go watch the YouTube video and see Neil Sean, the lead guitarist on that song in the YouTube video. He's got a fro that's about 4 feet off his head. But that's great. It's Greg Rowley on the keyboards before Jonathan Cain joined him. Greg, a little trivia there. By the way, I noticed on social media, on some of these sites I belong to, concerning Journey, that they were wishing Greg a happy birthday. I think he's 77. So He was the original keyboardist, and he played with Santana, by the way, at Woodstock. It was him and Neil Sean with Santana, and they
were like 17 or something?
Yeah, and played at Woodstock. And that's, by the way, that's him. That's his vocals on Black Magic Woman. Most people don't know that. That's Journey's original keyboardist, Greg Rowley, on the vocals on Black Magic Woman.
Wow. Didn't you ask Santana about that, Carlos Santana?
I did. And he was shocked that I knew about all that. Yeah. Only because I'm a big Journey fan, not because I...
You and I almost got to meet Carlos Santana.
I know.
Remember?
On a Sunday.
On a Sunday. They called me. They called me the day before and said, hey, you want to come meet Carlos Santana? And I called Gerard and I said, hey, let's go. We're going to go down there. He was playing at the Brandon Amphitheater. And we had it all set up, and I got a call later. No, it was early that morning, Sunday morning, and they said his show, and he had played in Alabama the night before. His show went long, and they were running behind, and we wouldn't be able to do the interview unless you wanted to do it by phone. So we did it by phone, and we
called in.
Yeah, we talked to him.
That was, often will I get asked, because I've been doing this 5 years now, what was your favorite interview or one you're most proud of? And
yeah,
it's always him in the speaker of the house. Completely different subject matter, but I mean, the guy's a legend, right? He's a musical legend. To think, and what was so surreal to me is I'm interviewing this guy who produced these songs that I loved growing up, that I used to play on the drums before I had drums when I was a kid, and I just loved to sit by my mother's little Zenith stereo. Remember the old console stereos? You put the record on. And I had the Santana album with Black Magic Woman and Oyo Komova, which have great drums in them. And I'd like pad that out on the floor, with my hands. That's all I had. But thinking about that, my love of those songs, and then the connection to Journey, my favorite band, and being able to interview him, a musical legend who played at Woodstock.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a relic.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But we were so fortunate to get him on, even though we didn't get to meet him in person, but just to conduct that interview. Because remember, I came up here on a Sunday to record it.
Record it.
Yeah. What a blast that was. And, man, you can't overstate his contributions to music. Just a whole new genre, of course. It felt like it, a style at least. Maybe not a genre, but a style. And so many people are familiar with those songs and rock them out today. So, really cool. Yeah, Lori and Goche, we probably ought to play a little Smoking by Boston there. It's a great tune. Long time, foreplay, long time.
Was that all off the debut album?
Yeah. Can you believe that? All that stuff off that, all the songs. More Than a Feeling, of course, probably their most popular song. All on that same album. So you get every track. It's one of those albums where every song you want to, you don't skip.
Yeah.
Back in those days, you had to pick the needle up and move it. Or if you had your 8-track, you could advance it a little bit. So, yeah. And a lot of tragedy associated, of course, with that band and Brad Delp, the unbelievable lead singer, and his tragic death. And some of the riffs you've heard about, there was lots of corruption that occurred back in those days where these young artists would get signed up with agents and so forth. There's a lot of stories about that. Not so much today. That sort of stuff doesn't happen. It's kind of more out in the open, and people are more sophisticated. But back then, man, they just wanted to play music, and they wanted to get compensated for it fairly, of course, and they should. But
they didn't realize the publishing rights and all that stuff.
Complicated.
That's where the real money was.
Yeah.
The mailbox money, as Steve Azar calls it.
That's right.
Because you go back and look at the official listings of who wrote some of these songs, and it'll be some producer or some, guy who never wrote a lyric in his life, but he added his name on there, and so he gets a cut.
Well, unfortunately, there are a lot of unscrupulous, corrupt people that got involved and took advantage of these young musicians. One of my favorite bands is Badfinger.
Oh, man,
Day After Day. I mean, that story's there. There's a documentary on it. I don't know that if it's ever aired on a television network, but YouTube, you can go watch the documentary. It's just sad what happened there. These were young guys, and they just got totally taken advantage of. 2 of them committed suicide. So, incredible. Made great music, though, the lads from England there. Can you do Fear the Reaper? I can. Of course, the drummer's not doing the cowbell, and all you can think about is the skit, right? Rhino and I talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Christopher Walken and Farrell. I mean, it's unbelievable. And even the costumes and the hair was perfect. You go look at the real Blue Oyster Cult members, and you look at that, they did resemble them. They did really good job with costumes and makeup. But, yeah, I actually can play the drums on that. Dave says, you're being too hard on yourself. When anybody in the band gets lost, they always come back to the drummer who has the beat. Stop being so hard on yourself. That's Dave in Monticello. You're right, Dave, and I can tell you that in our practices, I've actually stopped during a song and said, you know what, I'm sort of following you guys and you're going too slow or too fast. We need to change the tempo. And then I'll play kind of the beat. And everybody say, okay, you're right. And then we'll listen to it. We have a Bluetooth speaker, and we'll play whatever the song is we're practicing, and make sure we get the timing correctly. So, you're right. That is the job of the drummer. And I will say I feel like I do a pretty good job of that. And sometimes the other members will look at me and say, that don't sound right. And I say, I really think it is, guys. Why don't you crank it up? And they'll listen to it and say, okay, you're right. Let's go. So, you're right, Dave. Drummers have a sense about that and kind of have to. It's the bass drum and the bass guitar that are, of course, highly coordinated because you're accenting. The bass drum's accenting the bass guitar typically. So Blackwell sets up with his amp right next to me, because we don't have any monitors in our practices. He'll set up with his amp next to me. So this is the other thing I was going to tell you, Will. They told me last week, the sound people at Neshoba County Fair want to know how many mics you want on the drums. So that means they're going to have some pretty neat sound systems. So they're talking about mic in the drums, which I've played to before, and we did that in Gulfport. But certainly you want the bass drum mic'd, and you like the snare and the hi-hat mic'd. And if you got more, you can put something around the toms and the cymbals. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. Ought to be fun. Looking forward to that. I've seen John. Oh, no, that's a different deal. And that was after downing a bottle of Jack Daniels. I don't know what they're talking. Might be talking about Leonard Skinner or something in the music. I'm not sure. I saw Tommy Lee do that drum solo in Memphis, 1987. Wow, the one you were talking about. Yeah, that's cool. Hot for Teacher also starts out on the drums, says Dan in Hattiesburg.
Hot for Teacher would be a heck of a drum.
Yeah. David in Pascagoula says, Gerard, the Democrats do not want to give Trump any credit if he takes the nukes out. I fear you may be right, David. They're so just delusional and so obsessed with the president that they don't want him to achieve any success, even if in this case it would be in the best interest not only of this country and the region, but of the entire dang world. I agree with you, David, and it is sad that they're more concerned, more infatuated with that one man than they are the well-being of the country and the world. They're letting that blind them, if you will. We're stepping aside with the great Todd Rundgren bumping us out of this segment. When we return, it's Kelly Bennett, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Turn it up.
We are back in the Element Well studio. We were talking earlier before we get to Kelly about Secret Agent Man by Johnny Rivers and how all the shows of that time period. We're reminded on the C Spire text line. I can't believe I forgot this one. Get Smart.
Oh, yeah.
How could I forget that one? Thank you. That was on the 662. We welcome now Kelly Bennett, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
You joke so much during your show, George. I'm enjoying the kind of secondhand drum lessons you've been given. That was fun.
Well,
I play guitar. So,
awesome!
You know.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, sometimes you got to take a little break from the world of politics, and since the Senate and the House are out of session up in Washington,
right.
And of course we're sine die here in Mississippi, we'll depart from politics just a little bit, at least. Having fun with that. No, this band thing, I'm so energized by that. I think I told you I had to go buy some drums. I hadn't had drums in 40 years. Drums are not cheap, just so you guys will know. But I'm so honored.
Shoot, I think I spent $600 on my daughter's drum kit when she was still in high school, which has been many years now. She's almost 30. So
$600.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
It
I
was
wish it were
sale.
$600.
It was a really good sale, Gerard.
I was going to say, man. Shoot, you can't get a cymbal stand for $600. No, but it's a blast, and it makes you happy. It's fun. I mean, what could make you happier than playing music? My gosh, especially, right. I hope people are entertained and they enjoy it as well, because that is very gratifying. So here we are. All right, what's on your mind?
I actually got to watch you play, and I got to say you guys were really good.
Oh, appreciate that. That's right. You were in Gulfport. That's right. We appreciate that. That was a great event. A lot of fun for a great cause. Perfect weather. Centennial Plaza there.
Yes.
In Gulfport with a beautiful view of the Gulf of America, right over Highway 90 there. So a lot of fun. Appreciate you being there. What's going on?
Well, while we're on the fun stuff, today is the longest stretch of daylight in 2025 and the first day of what looks to be a very hot summer season. It's the first day of summer. Jeff Manasso has more.
The first day of summer is when the sun stays out the longest. It's happening today with the sun at its northernmost point with around 15 hours of sunlight, according to the Farmer's Almanac for the northern half of the globe, officially kicking off the summer solstice with pools and beaches likely in high demand as a heat wave moves in this weekend into next week for millions of Americans across the country, including triple-digit temperatures expected, along with heat warnings across the East Coast's I-95 corridor.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but in our interviews this week, like with the Mississippi Tourism Association, etc., we've talked about the rainfall we've had this year. And I remember she was like, yeah, if it would quit raining on the weekend, that would be really great for tourism. So that's kind of what's been going on there.
Yeah, Will and I just talked about that. Bunch of rain.
The need for less rain?
Yes, exactly. Forecast looks better for sure.
Yes. And my birthday's next Thursday, so if it could please not rain on my birthday next Thursday, that would be
happy birthday to you. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The U.S. Marshal Service is offering an up to $1,500 reward for information leading to the arrest of a dangerous fugitive. Now, we don't have a lot of details on this, but 26-year-old Detrika Thomas is wanted for a murder in Greenwood. He allegedly shot and killed Acardo Willis in April of 2024. He's described as being 5'7", approximately 160 pounds. Law enforcement officers say that Detrika should be considered armed and dangerous, and he's been known to hang out in the Memphis area, and he obviously has some connections in Greenwood as well. So just be on the lookout. I wanted to give you a heads up there. And, there was a big rise in violence and gun violence in Humphreys County. And this week, the county leaders decided to go ahead and enact a 90-day curfew as a result. Now, police are still investigating a shooting that brought this all into focus. It happened at a local game room last Friday night. 3 people were injured in that shooting. The sheriff's office also investigating the theft of a gun at the Belzona Police Department. A firearm was stolen from somebody's desk, and they think, it was just left out. So an opportunist went in there and stole the gun. So the curfew has been given the green light. That happened on Monday. So restaurants, bars, lounges, and other entertainment-based venues are required to close at midnight. Minors have to be home by 9 p.m. on weekdays and 11 p.m. on weekends, and the curfew is lifted each day at 6 a.m. If you want more information on that story, just log on to supertalk.fm. I hope the curfew does what police and other county leaders are hoping it'll do.
Interesting. What are you hearing from? I know we had a little soundbite from Lee Yancey yesterday from an interview we did with him yesterday. Anything coming out of the legislature, because the governor just signed all the bills. I think he did some vetoes, some line item vetoes as well, right? But I think his social media post, he signed like 99+% of them.
Yeah, and, they just finished the special session where they did work on the state budget and got that all worked out. And there was some kind of something that put our Medicaid federal money in jeopardy that the governor has promised to line item veto. So we'll be watching that. You're talking about big news this week. The State Board of Education decided students no longer need to pass a U.S. history assessment to graduate high school. That's something that had been happening. Now, the change will go into effect beginning in the fall of this year. This doesn't mean students don't have to pass their history class. It just means there won't be a statewide test on the subject, which is typically taken during the junior year. It was something that wasn't required federally, but we had left it in kind of statewide. And now they've taken that history test out so they can focus on the other things.
I believe there's a piece on that, right, on our website. Did we do it?
There is.
Yeah, we did a story on that.
Yeah, and go into more detail for you there. We've had a couple of gator stories this week. Have you noticed that?
I've heard about that.
Apparently, yeah, somebody got into an accident on Highway 84 yesterday with like a 7-foot gator that they found dead on the side of the road after this accident, and her vehicle was disabled. Well, there was a group of Gulfport police officers who removed a 5 to 6 foot alligator that was spotted near a school on Wednesday, near Kid Academy on East Pass Road. Now, I don't know if you follow along the Gulfport Police Department's Facebook page, but I do. And they like to tell jokes on there and get silly sometimes. So they were joking about the whole gator incident. They said their fearless officers unenrolled a scaly student who thought it was cool to cheer near a school. Sorry, buddy, we understand you're trying to scale up your education, but no enrollment without a backpack or a permission slip. It was just kind of cute the way they handled the whole thing.
Ben Milam wrote a story just published about Mississippi's airports receiving more than $21 million in federal grants. So
this just happened today,
right? Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that he's the one that grabbed onto that story to get it online. But there's a long list of airports receiving some of this grant money. If you want to take a look at that, just go to supertalk.fm.
Good piece on our website about that. 52 grants, federal funding, $21.48 million coming from the FAA's Airport Improvement Infrastructure grant programs. So that's interesting.
Well, and Cindy Hyde-Smith was talking earlier this week. Which hearing was she at? I can't remember, but federally they keep talking about money for airports to fix up outdated towers and equipment. And there's money for a new tower at Keesler Air Force Base in the upcoming budget.
Okay.
So, and we haven't done anything on that. I was saving that for Monday, Gerard. So there you go. Heads up.
Well, you know, she's on the Appropriations Committee, but there's a subcommittee she chairs that deals with transportation infrastructure and so forth. So she has a lot of sway, a lot of pull in that respect.
She really does, and in agriculture.
Yes, absolutely.
As well.
Yeah. So, all right, Kelly. Always appreciate the update and the conversation. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Gerard. Y'all have a great weekend.
You too. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
From the scene.
Are you ready? I'm ready.
Ready here. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Some people say this town don't look good in snow. You don't care, I know. Ventura Highway in the sun. Where the days are longer, the nights are stronger than
acoustic rock. America.
I was listening to this last night. I was listening to, do you remember Bread?
Very well. Played that on the drums.
That was a great band.
I don't think you've ever been on with me and probably don't know this. I saw them live at the Coliseum.
Oh, really?
71, 72, something like when they were in their prime.
Yeah.
David Gates and Bread.
David Gates.
Lead singer, founder. Yeah.
Great guitarist.
Yeah, and played yesterday, Rhino played my favorite song by Brett, Guitar Man.
Guitar Man.
Yeah, really good music there. So, and that was also kind of soft rock, I guess you'd call it.
The early 70s had that kind of soft rock.
Had a lot of that.
Yeah, it was a lot of that. Yeah, America, the band
that you just played.
That I just played. That type of. I love that music.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorites.
Well, you played Todd Rundgren. I would consider that kind of in that genre. I'm not an expert on that, on categorizing music like that, but I would sort of put it in that category.
Yeah, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. A little bit of that.
Yeah,
I love that genre. That sound has always really appealed to me.
Yeah, I like it too. America was great. Ventura Highway there was a good one. I like. Yeah, that was probably their first big hit. I don't know, between that and Ventura Highway, I'm not sure which one came out first. The one I like is You Can Do Magic.
You can do.
That's a great video, by the way, and it's one of those deals where they look like they're having so much fun, performing that music. I know we're talking a lot about that today. Hope we're not boring folks with that. Just not completely departing from our political commentary, but just mixing it up a little bit. So, a lot of stuff going on.
Well, it's either this or war with Iran.
I know.
What would you rather hear?
And, I think like everybody else does, I want peace and stability. And I think about like our president and so many people in our government that are so consumed with this issue. We should be working on prosperity. That's what improves the quality of life and safety. But we got to get the safety thing right first, I should say. But it's consumed so many cycles because there's bad people.
Yeah.
If the bad people would just act right, we could all pull the cart in the same direction towards improving the quality of life. But you can't do that when you're looking over your shoulder and you got these radical idiots that want to kill people. It's just unbelievable.
It really is.
In Mississippi, something we need to point out, Will, is we got some special elections coming up. That's going to be primaries taking place August 5th, general election November 4th. And people are already a little weary from the municipal elections.
Gosh, it seems like
all we
do is elect people.
But you remember we had a panel of federal judges who said, you guys got to redraw the lines there on the districts in certain areas of the map. So we got several elections scheduled. Senate. We have one House district. Your neck of the woods, House District 16, includes Chickasaw, Lee, Monroe, and Pontotoc counties. And then we got another House district. It's multiple. I said one. I misspoke. There's another one that also touches Chickasaw, Clay, and Monroe counties. And then a Clay, Lowndes, Monroe, and Oktibbeha. Lowndes and Oktibbeha. So everything's in that kind of east, central east.
Chickasaw County.
Yeah, and then one in Lowndes County as well. House District 39, Lowndes and Monroe, Dana McClain, the Republican incumbent, at this point has no opposition. Not even any Democrat has filed for that district. The rest of them, well, there's another one. Carl Gibbs, Democrat incumbent in Clay, Lowndes, Monroe, and Oktibbeha. That's House District 36. No opposition. The one that includes Chickasaw, Clay, and Monroe, Justin Crosby, the Democrat, John Lancaster, the Republican incumbent. Let's see here. We got another one, Chickasaw, Lee, Monroe, and Pontotoc. Brady Davis, the Democrat, Representative Ricky Thompson, the Democrat incumbent. No Republicans filed to run in that race. Johnny Dupree, Democrat, Anna Rush, Republican, Forrest and Lamar counties to our south. Forrest, Lamar, and Perry, the Republican incumbent. Chris Johnson, he's been on the program before. Christopher Lott, Republican. Shakita Taylor, the Democrat. Senate District 42 in the Senate now. Forest, Greene, Jones, and Wayne counties. Don Hartness, Republican. He's run before. This is an interesting one, Will. Randy Robinson and the incumbent Robin Robinson are siblings, and they're running against each other. Long story behind that one. True story.
Where is this in Mississippi?
This is Forest, Greene, Jones, and Wayne counties.
Okay.
Down the Pine Belt.
Yeah.
And then Don Hartness, also a Republican. No Democrats in that race as well. That's Republican stronghold, of course.
Is it brother versus brother?
Sister.
Yeah. What was the names again?
Randy Robinson.
All right.
And the incumbent Robin Robinson.
All right.
Who holds the
sister
seat now.
Versus sister.
Who, I believe, switched from the House to the Senate. And remember, her late husband was a candidate for Secretary of State, Sam.
Oh, yeah.
I apologize. His last name escapes me, and I apologize for that. Ran against. Remember the rather contentious discussion they had in these two chairs?
Ran against Michael Watson, right?
Yes.
I remember the debate.
Yes.
We had them both in here to do a debate.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes, and it got.
It was a heated.
For
a
heated.
Secretary of State, that's typically not one that gets very heated. This was a very heated contest. That primary.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody will tell us. And Sam Britton. That's it. Yep. Apologize for that not being on the tip of my tongue there, but I just remember that because I don't know if you remember. I know you're the one that tracks all this. I bet that was one of the most viewed videos you've ever published.
I remember the setup for that. I remember the segments. We did several. I think we did several segments. But the thing that struck me was I remember. I think I was telling my wife this. I said we're having two candidates in for a debate. She said, "What office?" I said, "For Secretary of State." She said, "For Secretary? There's a debate for Secretary of State?"
Yeah, two Republicans. 2019. This was in the 19 cycle. He, of course, was a member of the Public Service Committee. He was a Public Service Commissioner before he ran for Secretary of State in the Southern District. But, so that's how interesting is that particular race, though? And I don't know all the background on it, but I just know it's a brother and sister. Senate District 41, Covington, Lamar, Marion, Walthall County. So you can see that the court said, you got this area you got to do something about, and you got this area, and that just touches so many. And then you had DeSoto County as well. So in that area, this Joey Fillingham, of course, who's a Republican incumbent, has been a senator from that area for quite some time. Drew no opposition either in the primary or the general election. Same is true with Juan Barnett, Democrat incumbent. He's been on the program before. He oversees the Corrections Committee. Yep. Covington, Jasper, and Jones counties. Up there in DeSoto County area, that's the other one I said that got redrawn, the other region. Diane Black, the Democrat, will face Kevin Blackwell, the Republican incumbent. He heads the Medicaid committee. So, you know what's happening? All these folks are having fundraisers. I mean, it's breaking everybody. That it's like, man, we give us till 27, so because we've also got a U.S. Senate election on tap for 2026 along with the big midterm. It's just incredible to think that we're a year and a half out from less than a year and a half out from the midterm elections. We just got the president in there, right? So here we go again.
When you pay attention to it, Gerard, when you're in the muck of it and you're paying attention to it about all the elections, it seems like it never stops.
I know. It's constant.
It's constant.
For us,
you get done with federal elections, you got
municipal. We just had municipal
elections. It's
so we got federal, municipal, special, and then midterms, and then we go back to the statewide again.
Yeah.
Man, oh man. Senate District 11, that's Coahoma, DeSoto, Equipment, Tate, Tunica. 2 Democrats and a Republican in that one. Kendall Pruitt, the Republican challenger to Reginald Jackson, the Democrat incumbent. Abe Hudson Jr., also a Democrat. And then DeSoto and Tunica counties, you got, let's see, 3 Democrats and a Republican. The Republican Charlie Hoots. I got an invitation to a fundraiser from him in the mail. And then DeSoto and Tate, that's District 1. Chris Hanna, Michael McClendon, the incumbent, and then the challenger, John Stevenson on the Republican side. Coming right back, folks. Stay with us.
Polyupa, Mississippi. Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Little rim shot action in that one. Good music there. Great Paul McCartney.
Yeah, he was, I would say, the most successful of the in the post-Beatles era.
Yeah,
of course, John Lennon got cut short, obviously, when he was assassinated. But George Harrison, man, if you really get deep into some of his albums, post-Beatles, good stuff.
Pretty talented. He's incredibly talented.
The quiet one.
Yeah, exactly. On the C Spire text line, Tim from Tupelo, while we're talking about music, says, it irritates me some of these people on Facebook that say Steve Perry was the original lead singer in Journey. No, he didn't join the band until 1977. That would be who we were talking about, Greg Rowley. So they produced 2 albums before Perry joined the band. October 10th, 1977 was his first performance. That was at Soldier Field in Chicago. I remember the story. 100,000. Because, you can convert the field, of course, to seating as well, besides the seating in the stadium. 100,000. And they hired Steve Perry just before that. Greg Rowley basically was ready to end his career, the touring and so forth. He, the keyboardist at the time, and also the lead singer for the band. And but then he continued on with them, though, even after that, because they sang together. They sang on the Infinity album, 1978. I believe that's got the song Lights on it. Very, very popular. Wheel in the Sky, of course. Feeling That Way, by the way, is my favorite tune on the album as well. And Rowley sings lead vocals along with Perry on that one. So, cool. Billy in Pascagoula says, saw America years ago at Judge Roy Bean's on the Eastern Shore. Mobile Bay outdoors in the rain, a tarp stretched between the pine trees to try to keep the rain off the crowd. Great night, Billy in Gula. Pablo Cruz, yeah, that's Yacht Rock. There you go, Mose. You're right about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So I just want lower gas prices on the C Spire text line. Yeah, it's you're already seeing prices tick up. I didn't get to it yesterday, but I remember a text rolling through where someone said they'd seen the price of gas tick up 20 to 30 cents, and that's because of the instability in the Middle East and the concerns about disruptions in supply, especially the strait there, through which much oil supply travels. It's moderated and sort of tapered off a bit, but still at $77 a barrel, that's up quite a bit from where it was, a short 2 months ago, which drove the price down. And that was mainly driven by a decline in demand and some boost in supply from Saudi Arabia. But this situation in the Middle East with Iranian oil and perhaps even other oil-producing nations' supply being disrupted is causing angst in the oil markets, and that's why the price is up. So you're going to see that translate. Yeah, it's $75 today, so it's down a little bit. Just came across the screen. You're going to see that translate, I think, folks, to higher oil prices, higher gas prices here in the near term. We'll see if that number continues to taper down. Some really good news on the economic front however, that the Trump administration is rightfully promoting and touting, and that's real wages for blue-collar workers up by the largest margin in a 6-month period in 60 years. So real wages, just so you'll know, that's the difference between the nominal amount your wages go up. You made $1 today, and tomorrow you're making $1.20 because of a lot of factors. It could be raises, or maybe you're a gig worker. But this is blue-collar workers only. So, but if your wages go up, in that example I just provided, by 20 cents, but the cost of what you buy goes up 30, you're upside down. Even though your wages are up, your real wages, which is the net of the increase in your wages and the increase in the cost of living, the inflation. So what we've had is rather level inflation, 2.5% on average the last 6 months, but wages have outpaced that. During the Biden administration, it was the opposite. Wages were going up, as they typically do, but not enough to keep up with the increase of the cost of living. And so you had negative net wage growth. So this is good news from the Trump administration, and they're rightfully touting that. I think, Will, you'll see that be a big talking point, because I think it's going to get better from here. You're going to see that be a big talking point in the midterms, real wages. And it should be. Republicans should latch on to that and promote that. That is something the American people wanted. They want more disposable income. This is how you get it. We're stepping aside for a break right now. It's top of the hour. That means it's time for Fox News and SuperTalk News from the Element Wealth Studio. And then it's Ricky Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays. We're once again live from the Element Wealth Studio on this, as Rhino would say, Friday, y'all. It's our pleasure to welcome now Ricky Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democrat Party. Ricky, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
Yes, sir. So you and I have not had the pleasure in the past of meeting here in the studio, but I know you're no stranger to this. You've been on before. You've been active in the political world for quite some time. Let's see, last ran for Ag Commissioner, right?
Yes.
What was that year?
In 2019.
19, okay.
You and I shared the stage at Jacinto.
That's right.
That day.
That's right. We sure did. I remember. What an event. That's just pure Mississippi there, isn't it, Ricky?
One of the first pieces of advice I give any candidate who's running statewide in Mississippi is that Jacinto is just as important as the Neshoba Fair.
Yeah. Now, I know you have an incredible grasp on political history in Mississippi and just the history of Mississippi in general and our geography, our diverse culture. There's probably a lot of people out there listening, Ricky, that aren't even familiar with that event. But you're so right. It's the first time I've ever been was in 2019. And I was thinking about running for office at the time, and they were gracious enough to allow me to speak. You get a short period of time, and it's kind of a throwback a bit. You've got a trailer that serves as the stage and a couple of speakers that project and a podium and a microphone. And I think Representative Nick Bain served as the MC. He normally does. He's from the area. His family has a storied history in that area. And it literally is kind of on the banks, the hills, and the grove of the trees. Beautiful setting with the old historic courthouse.
Yep, that's the way most political events went on when I was a boy around Mississippi. You'd get a flatbed trailer or a lowboy and put it up under the shade, and folks would show up.
Yeah, there was a number of people who spoke. You get a short period of time to say your piece. Of course, that was statewide election year, so you had, I think, all the statewide candidates. Maybe a couple were absent. But then you had lots of local candidates. And what I recall, I don't know if you remember this, Ricky, was how many were running for justice court positions? It seemed like there was 20 people running because you don't have to be a lawyer in Mississippi. The high school degree, I think, is the minimum requirement.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when you didn't have to have the high school degree. That was actually a reform.
Okay. Wow. So, but it was fascinating listening to there's just common people out there that are, in various walks of life that make the decision they want to be a justice court judge, and they, of course, address the crowd there in that setting. That was neat.
Before the justice court system was created, we had a system of justices of the peace.
I remember that,
In each supervisor's district, there was a justice of the peace. And many of the justices of the peace also owned a country store. And so you could go by the store and pick up a couple of pounds of bacon and pay your fine or pay on your fine or whatever you had to do without having to go all the way into town.
I want to say that's who collected traffic citations.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know State Senator Robin.
Sure, very well.
Her mother, Mary Joyce, who's still doing well, was a justice court judge in Jones County when I was a kid.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, so what have you been doing since you ran for office in 2019?
I decided to have a real life. And my children were growing up and my parents were getting older, so I've been more of a family man over the last 5 or 6 years than I had in the preceding 15 or 20.
Okay.
I know you can relate to that.
Yes, sir.
Having been putting in those 22-hour days in the private sector.
Know it well.
But we have a little farm in southeast Jones County, and I've got a few head of cattle. And Mama's still there, 87 years old, still calling the shots. And my wife and children are in Jackson. I've got a daughter who's just finishing up her freshman year in college, and my son's about to go into the 10th grade. So I've been family focused for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying it.
Well, good for you. You look great, by the way.
Thank you.
Please, you didn't have to dress up for me. Now, during the session,
I woke up like
I'm in
this.
my suit.
I
bet you did. I know you're a sharp dresser.
It's either this or the overalls. That's all you get. It's one extreme or the other.
And you've got the blue Democrat tie on there as well. Mm-hmm. So
straight from Walmart.
I love it. And you also have a great sense of humor. So,
well, I'm not a serious enough person to take myself seriously. And I try not to take life too seriously because we're not going to be here that long anyway.
You're so right about that. I agree. So have you been involved in politics at all since then?
Yes. It's sort of like the line from Michael Corleone, every time I think I'm out, they drag me back in. I was sort of drafted to take the leadership role in the 4th Congressional District Democratic Executive Committee.
Okay.
During the COVID period, the chair at the time had passed away and there was no leadership. So in 2023, late 2023, the folks asked me to chair that committee, which is 1/4 of the state committee, 20 members. And I agreed to do it, and we got through a district and state convention last year. And I'm in the traces again until 2028. But I'm always keeping an eye toward the exit.
So, future political aspirations?
None.
Okay.
None.
All right.
My time is past.
Nah.
I feel very strongly that in politics, like in theater, a person needs to know when to exit stage left. And I've got my eye on the exit because there are people younger and smarter, with better character and more capable than I have ever been or ever could be, who could occupy any and all offices that I might run for.
Okay.
So I want to support Gen X and Gen Z and have the good grace that unfortunately some of our older politicians haven't had to get out of the way when I still know where the exit is.
So would you include the former president in that category? What do you think about that?
I was one of the people who believed that he should have stuck. You're talking about President Biden.
Yes.
I was one of the people who believed that he should have stuck to his commitment to seek that one term and one term only.
Okay.
Over the last few years, if you'll forgive a personal example, over the last few years since 2016, I saw my father decline, and it's painful to see. It's certainly painful up close, but it's painful to see at a distance too. And my grandfather, who lived to be 94, told me shortly after his 80th birthday. He said he called us all boy. It wasn't because he couldn't remember our name. He was just keeping us in our place. Papa said, "Boy, you need to understand, after a man turns 80, he ought not to ever buy green bananas." And that's no reflection on elderly people, but I just think
great advice.
I think that there's Ecclesiastes tells us there's a time and a season to every purpose.
Okay.
And those of us who have fewer tomorrows than we do yesterdays should recognize that and work and groom and help and advise as well as possible the rising generation.
So you know this, Ricky. There are a lot of concerns among Republicans that, maybe the president wasn't really in charge, and we really want to know who was signing some of these orders and pardons and stuff. And so they scheduled a hearing, but the Democrats sort of turned their back on it and defied it. So what do you think about that? Should they show up and testify?
Well, first of all, given the bigness of our federal government, no president's ever in charge.
That's a good point.
No president. It's too big
Not
a
of
job.
Everything, I agree.
It's too big a job for one mind.
Sure.
But I don't know what what an investigation could prove. I suspect there are some less than pure motivations than just good government and openness.
It's politics, Ricky.
Yeah. But especially this notion about the pardons. I think the wrong question is being asked about pardons. I think we should ask the question in the 21st century, why do we still afford those sweeping powers of pardon to be used so capriciously?
I agree with you, Ricky.
I think that a pardon should be as rare as the 29th of February.
Not only do I agree with you, I believe that's what the framers had in mind when they conferred that power
to
the executive branch, to the executive, honestly. So we got a break right here. You can hang around with us, Cam.
Of course.
Yeah. We got Ricky Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party, in the Element Well studio, coming right back.
You already know Pilly.
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge news. Huge news. You need to listen to this.
MidDays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
You know the blues got soul. Fine top said it. You know the blues got soul.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Ricky Cole, former chairman of the Mississippi Democratic Party, also former candidate for Agricultural and Commerce Commissioner here in the state. So, Ricky, you of course, like I said earlier, you've been a student of political history and all history related to Mississippi. I follow you on social media, and I'm always fascinated with your degree and depth of knowledge about our state. I mean, you're a person I consider just a quintessential Mississippian. You and I may not always agree on some policy matters, but I just want you to know I respect that.
Thank you.
And you're a respectful person. You're not a confrontational person. And I think you and I would agree we need more of that type of discourse in our politics. We can get a lot more done together when we have that. But, man, we seem to be so polarized at all levels of government. But you've witnessed in the state of Mississippi this transition from one that was under Democrat control forever. Now it's one that's under Republican control with supermajorities in both houses and, of course, all the statewide positions. Is there anything to which you'd attribute that, Ricky? And do you see any sort of major contrast in their philosophy and their approach to governing than the prior Democrat Party?
Well, to your first point, my love for Mississippi is total and complete.
I believe that. It's genuine.
This is my home. And if you want to make me mad, tell me I don't need to be here. This is my home. And my mother's family has been in Mississippi since before statehood, 1814. As regards to the current state of political discourse, I think that too many people in and around and who follow politics make three major mistakes in their discourse and debate with people who have different opinions. Number one, we practice this horrible little game of whataboutism. You know, if the highway patrol pulls you over on 55 and you're going 92 miles an hour, he's not going to fail to write you that ticket just because somebody else breezes by at 92 miles per hour. You can't say, well, don't write me a ticket, you didn't catch him. So that's a fallacy in the argument. The other problem we run into is the ad hominem attack. Don't get personal. We have to live together. This is all our Mississippi. Don't be personal and don't go after people's personal lives or personal business or attack somebody because of some credential they may lack. Stick to the argument. And the third thing, and this is getting more and more and more prevalent, is this notion of owning somebody. The way to own somebody is to win the argument, win the debate on the ideas. Let's stick to ideas and not personality. Stick to the subject at hand and not be in such a hurry to dehumanize each other. We're not at war. There is no civil war in this country, and there ain't going to be one, and anybody who says so is a fool. And the reason for that is all of us are all too busy trying to make a living and survive. We hadn't got time to fight one another. We got to fight the bill collectors. So if we will simply follow the golden rule, you know, that's why it's written in red. It's a really important statement. And my great grandmother taught it to us really simply: treat folks the way you want to be treated. And this dehumanizing gamesmanship. And I have to say that a fish rots from the head. And there's a lot of vitriol that comes out of Washington, D.C. that is shameful, and from both sides. And we don't have to insult each other to get our point across. We were taught to disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that's the great thing that's been lost. Some of the best aspects of our old Mississippi culture have been thrown away. And some of the worst and lowest aspects of our old Mississippi culture has gone national. And I think that's shameful in both regards. I would have loved to have seen us preserve some of the decency and kindness and expand that decency and kindness to include everybody, rather than this rush to xenophobia and this rush to whataboutism and this rush to insulting people and attacking people mercilessly. And it makes for horrible public policy, if any public policy at all can come out of it.
It appears, Ricky, I think it's fair to say that the Democrat Party has leaned quite heavily into what is commonly referred to as identity politics, and they've adopted this deference to this gender ideology and stuff. Do you think that's the right strategy for the Democrats? Is this something you support as well?
Well, you know, all of that's way above my pay grade. Because I believe that, as I was taught, that we ought to take people the way the Lord made them, and that's one at a time. And we are all created equal. You know, The thing that makes America exceptional is not our wealth or our geography or even our people. The thing that makes America exceptional is those words that Jefferson wrote 249 years ago. All men are created equal and endowed with the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and other rights.
By their creator.
By their creator.
Not government.
Creator, capital C, creator.
That's right.
And it's a God-given birthright to all humanity, not just us in this country, but every human being all over the earth.
Yeah.
And I think when we forget that and move away from that, we're moving further away from the golden rule.
Okay.
And the golden rule is not golden only because it was the inspired word of God. The golden rule is a heck of a key to success. If you treat folks the way you want to be treated, you can be as rich as Gerard Gibert.
Well, I don't know about that.
Or as rich as I am in friends.
Well, I will tell you that was an ingrained principle and value in my company as well. And it told the story a million times. We treat people the way we would like to be treated in business, and that resonated pretty well with our customers. And we meant it, and we lived by that. But I was going to ask you this. If your pay grade were higher, what advice would you give the Democrat Party today?
I think we have to be who we are without prefix, suffix, or apology. And I think we also have to understand that if we are comfortable with every person in our coalition is not big enough to win. We shouldn't play the game of exclusion based on attitudes. If we're going to be a party that preaches inclusion, we have to be inclusive and understand that there is no single public policy that has to be the litmus test as a price of admission.
Okay.
Nor should any political party have a loyalty test to one person as a price of admission either.
What would you advise the Republican Party?
Just that. Be Republicans and be a us.
Okay.
And not a I.
Gotcha.
A one-man band is not very entertaining very long. Our political parties are grand, old entities.
Yeah.
My party's almost 200 years old now, or is 200 years old now. And these venerable old institutions were around before we got here, and they'll be around when we leave. And we're temporary stewards and custodians. But we have to understand that we have inherited a brand, just like Coke or Pepsi. And we have to protect our brand and expand our brand, and that's our job. We are not at war. The political parties are not at war, and we should never use the war metaphor. What we're fighting for is market share. And the best example is Coke and Pepsi. You know, we're without any ads, we're both at about 40.
That's true.
And we're fighting for that little bit that's in the middle so we can have bragging rights and have control of the market and have the best end caps and the best display in the store and more room for my Coke or more room for your Pepsi. And that's really all that we're doing.
I love the metaphor.
And Democrats are not always right. Republicans are not always wrong. But by God, we are all always Americans. And we're all children of God, regardless of whether we ever sit under a steeple or not. And we ought to treat each other that way, every day, all day, not just at 11 o'clock on Sunday.
It seems like we've shifted away from the notion of public service. We've conferred too much power, too many spoils to public office, which attracts a lot of people, and why a lot of people won't give it up.
It's not just government. It's our society. I saw a sad story the other day, and I can't remember what town it was in, but there was a Lions Club that was closing out, and they were giving their last scholarships, and they were shutting down. And this was not in a tiny little place. This was in a mid-sized town somewhere in Mississippi. I can't remember the town. But I thought how tragic, because we Mississippians and we Americans have become so less community-oriented and so atomized into our own little individual worlds that whatever we do, we look at it as a transaction and what's in it for me.
Makes sense.
And that's a cultural thing. I think government follows the culture. The culture doesn't follow the government.
Good point. Ricky, appreciate you coming, man.
Anytime, Gerard.
Yep, enjoyed the discussion.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
a lot. Ricky
Yes, sir.
Cole, former chair of the Mississippi Democratic Party, has been our guest. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Go ahead and have your way.
Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio with a little Billy Joel. That, by the way, is the favorite artist of our content director, Alex Payton, who just walked through the studio to say hello to Mr. Cole. She's a big Billy Joel fan. You know that. Big time. So.
Mr. Cole had some pearls of wisdom.
Oh, man, that was...
I'm gonna take his line about as rare as the 29th of February. I'm going to take that one and put it in my little toolbox. I'm going to use that one.
Really good. Enjoyed that. And so he's not a confrontational person, and he's very objective, and I felt like he offered an objective analysis of his own party.
Yeah.
And, he doesn't have a dog in the hunt and doesn't have any future political aspirations. He's not towing any party line. He just told it like it is. So you have to respect him for that. Now, he and I have had some private discussions, and there's a lot of stuff, most stuff, we don't agree with. But, something that he is aligned with us on, because he kind of comes from more old guard Democrat philosophy, and that's fiscal responsibility. And he said something about that when we were off the air.
Pay-as-you-go Democrat.
Yeah. He said, I'm a pay-as-you-go Democrat. And he said, my concern is the Republicans. They were sort of been responsible for carrying the fiscal responsibility mantle, but they've fallen off on that in that respect. He's right.
I'm reminded of post 9/11. I remember when the Republicans took basically every office there was post 9/11 and just went on a absolute spending spree.
Yeah,
and it pales in comparison to what we have now.
Oh yeah, right.
Obviously, but I remember just NBC News used to do this thing on the nightly news where they would call the fleecing of America, and that every night
I remember
they would have a segment about, it was the time I was growing up, and I could remember, I was old enough to remember some of this stuff, and I just remember all the waste and all the stuff that they spent money on when they got power, and I think it was Dick Armey. Do you remember Dick Armey?
Yeah, very well. And he was very outspoken about that.
He was basically ostracized.
Yes.
Because he said, this is not us.
Right.
This ain't us, folks.
Yep. And proposed some legislation that got lots of criticism as well to try to rein in some of the crazy stuff. But, yeah, he was just a common sense. I tell you who kind of reminds me of him somewhat. Of course, he was from Texas, as I recall.
Yes.
And I think at one time was a majority leader in the House.
He was. And
Dick Armey.
His most famous thing that he's done post, I don't know about the most famous thing, but one of the most famous things he's done post being in office is he tried to sue to get out of government health care because he, over the age of, whatever,
yeah.
He tried to. And I think he also tried to get out of Social Security. And they just kept sending him checks.
Can't do it.
You can't do it.
You can't. Right. Can't get out.
He's like, I don't need this money. I don't need this government insurance. And he can't get out of it.
Can't get out of it. No doubt about it. I similarly had a couple of foster kids for a few years, and they're automatically enrolled in Medicaid. Mm-hmm. And I petitioned to our Department of Human Services. Of course, that's who administers that program, who you're with. Man, I really don't need them to be on Medicaid. I can add them to my private insurance. I'm happy to cover the cost of that. And
you can't do it.
You can't. But I will say this. The reason is that when you're a foster child, you're temporary. You're not permanent as you are when you're adopted. And so a foster parent can just, at the drop of a hat, call their social worker and say, come get it. I'm done. I don't want this child anymore. And that would create all kinds of problems with their health care, as you can imagine. But, it seems like we could figure something out to sort of work around that, because I think there are a lot of other foster parents that would indicate the same. It would be willing to cover those costs. But nonetheless, I felt like that Mr. Cole is a straight shooter, and again, he's kind of I would call him more in line with the old blue dog Democrats, that
that don't really exist
don't
anymore.
exist anymore. And I think it's probably fair to say we've got some Republicans in our legislature that kind of come from that philosophy that are a little bit more aligned with the Blue Dog Democrats than they are more to the right conservative Republicans, which is why we can't get a lot of stuff through that I would consider to be consistent with modern Republican philosophy and principles. The discussion Rhino and I had at length yesterday with a lot of people on the text line about school choice. And that came from the conversation we had with Representative Lee Yancey, who talked about that and what happened in the session this past year. But nonetheless, really appreciate him coming in. Let's see what we got on the C Spire text line. Ben from Madison, fascinating conversation. If I were a Democrat, I would be doing all I could to keep that guy in our corner. I agree with you, Ben. Will, contrast him to the what about it, vitriolic, in-your-face, America's terrible, Ilhan Omar, sort of what you think about in the Democrat Party today. No comparison. No comparison to Mr. Cole. I think he'd tell you, yeah, they're wrong too.
Absolutely.
Just based on what he said today. Now, he's not the type of person that's going to start calling out names, and that's fine. He doesn't have to. It's pretty obvious what we're talking about. But when you've got, I went off on a rant on this a couple of days ago. You saw the video of Representative Ilhan Omar from the state of Minnesota saying America's a terrible country. We're like one of the worst countries. Like, you're sitting in the U.S. House. I can't even comprehend that.
Yeah.
You would never see Mr. Cole say anything like that. And you heard him say, don't say anything bad about my Mississippi. And there are not many around these days that have the legacy he does, right, that goes back so long.
He said his mother's family was here before
it was a state.
Think about that.
How many can make that claim?
Wow.
So you can't deny, and we may have different approaches on how to govern our state, but you can't deny the guy loves the state and wants to see it succeed. But again, on his way out, talking about you Republicans need to help us with this fiscal responsibility. Like, we're relying on you to carry this mantle for us.
And for years, that was one of the things you could count on with the Republicans was fiscal responsibility. But it's just gone by the wayside.
Because it's too easy. There are no consequences for it.
Too easy. There's no consequences. It's a blank check that your grandkids will have to, that generate. I remember when I was a kid, it was your great-great-grandkids were going to have to pay for this. Then it was your great-grandkids. And then now it's just your grandkids.
Yeah.
It gets closer and closer and closer.
On the C Spire text line, Mr. Cole is a smart name, or did he mean to say man? I'm not sure.
I think he meant to say smart man.
Yeah, I agree. What a class act. Great job of having him on the show. This is Chris in Forest County. I think it's an example of we Republicans can learn from him as an individual, even though he's a Democrat, and vice versa. And, Chris, I'll say again, Will, I don't think we have this Grand Canyon-sized chasm between our beliefs and our values and our philosophy of government as we do with the modern Democrat Party.
Yeah.
Just thinking about how hard they lean into identity politics. And I asked him that question. That's why I did, because they seem to have taken that up as their top priority.
The other thing he said that I thought was really smart is he said there shouldn't be a litmus test on one issue.
Good point.
For every and both parties are kind of have that.
We have.
If you disagree with us on this, you can't be a Democrat. You can't be a Republican if you disagree on this one single issue.
Rambo in Carthage says if only half of the politicians, Republican and Democrats, had the mindset and humility of this gentleman, the world would be in a better place. I agree with you, Rambo. Still don't know based on his answers. Definitely a good Democrat. Dodged the questions. I don't know if I'd say that. That's Bub and Starkville. I didn't feel that way, and I really don't. What did he dodge? Well, I don't know that he did.
I think he answered.
I asked him about the identity politics stuff, and the reason I brought that up is because wouldn't you agree that's kind of dominated a Democrat discourse? It has. Really, in the last 5 years.
It certainly has.
You'd have to say that. In fact, yesterday being Juneteenth, I saw on social media the replay and the reposting of the big event the White House held, and poor Joe Biden just looked so out. Remember the dancing in line and all that stuff, and he was just looked so out of sorts. And even Mr. Cole said, and I don't think he would have shied away from saying it during the campaign if he had a platform to do so. He said, it's time to go to the House, and he used some great metaphors in that. Don't buy green bananas when you're over 80 or something like that. How great is that? So, I mean, you have to respect him at least for, concluding that. So I would say, Bubba, that would be specific. He very specifically said, he didn't need to run again, right? Yeah. And he said that. He should have.
Don't buy green bananas when you're 80.
And remember, he said he should have kept to his commitment of running for one term.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I would consider that a specific, succinct answer to a very direct and controversial question. Stepping aside for a break. When we return, it's the final segment of Middays on this Friday, y'all. Stay with us.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk Mississippi.
And my love for you is still unknown. Alone.
That's from the all-hit request line. I know Gary in the Berg said he thought Hart's best tune was Love Alive. He sent that one. I had Will whip up my favorite Hart song. We'll get to yours on another day, Gary. That's my favorite Hart.
That song had a lot of vocals and a lot of hair.
Yes, it did.
Looking at the album cover for it, and I think
early
the guy
80s,
in the back,
right?
Yeah, early 80s. No, 87.
Okay, mid-80s, yeah.
The guy in the back has more hair than the women.
It's awesome. That was back in the big hair era of the
days.
80s, yeah. And the video is fantastic if you're watching that. So with the big hair, and it also there's a scene in there where they show them on like the tour bus, and they're talking to each other, and they got the big hair mullets. That's awesome. You know what I kind of like is that, at least about that era, is that the performers looked like they were more into the sort of trim look. I mean, not just talking about the big hair, but the clothing was a big part of their act, kind of snazzy and sort of, I like to call it the 80 triangles.
Yeah, a lot of triangles.
Look, a lot of triangles. Kind of neat.
Shoulder pads.
Yeah, exactly. The big shoulder pads. Yeah, no doubt. Ann Wilson is outstanding on the C Spire text line. I have no doubt about that. And Nancy, they were both fantastic. Ricky Cole should be a voice actor for commercials.
He should.
He does. He has a great voice and a great accent. Let's see what else we got. Sitting on the beach in Navarre, Florida, drinking a cold Coors Light, listening to Middays with Gerard. It don't get any better than this. God bless America. Well, thanks for tuning in to us on your vacation. Appreciate that, and I hope you enjoy yourself.
Next time.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. There was something else that came up that I'm looking for. Let's see, and I can't find it right now. But I appreciate all the feedback. Certainly, I think that it would be good to get him on and get his perspective in the future. And I agree with Ben from Madison. If I were a Democrat, I'd listen to this guy. I'd listen to him before I would that crazy James Carville who's off on the deep end, man.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're still listening to him. I think his time is sort of past for sure.
You know, I think a lot of politicians, I know business leaders probably face the same thing, is you can't see what's right in front of your face sometimes. They get so, involved in these Twitter disputes and staying online and all this kind of stuff, and they miss the forest for the trees. They just can't see what's going on. I definitely feel that way about some mainstream politicians.
Yeah.
Is that they're so involved. They're so, every day is just a big event and all this kind of stuff, whereas most Americans, they just go about their business.
Yeah, I agree. Just want to be left alone.
And they just want to go to work and, go home in the afternoon, and that's that. Work in their yard and on the weekend, and that's that. And, not everything is big breaking news.
That's right.
And not everything is, game changing and all this kind of stuff. And
people want stability and something without all the drama. I think you get tired of all the drama, but unfortunately our dramatized culture, the media is fed on that. You know that, and it's
media, and now of course it's social media.
Yeah, exactly. On the C Spire text line, sir, great show. Not that I don't enjoy every show, but this one has a perfect mix of humor, politics, and music. The only thing missing was a Rhino rant. By the way, do you play Four Sticks by the great Bonzo Bonham? No, I can't do that. I mean, John Bonham was a freak from a musical perspective. I don't know, how else to describe it. There are a few that have played the Skins and sat on the throne that have that kind of talent, but it's a short list, and he's certainly among the top. We didn't talk about Def Leppard's drummer. We talked about that in the hall earlier. Only has one arm, lost it in a car wreck. I saw him perform live at Smoothie King a few years ago. They fronted for Journey. Yeah, he's unbelievable. I mean, he's better with his feet than most of us are with our hands. He's incredible.
Yeah, I saw his drum solo. I was at which one? Smoothie Center in New Orleans?
Yeah, Smoothie.
I was at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville.
Yeah.
They opened for Kiss.
Play hockey.
Yeah. And, he was incredible.
He can definitely play. Also want to pass on that today on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear an interview with Camel King, who has a new book called Jacktown, USA, about Mississippi soul music. In the Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, of course, is presented by Superior Catfish. Remember, there's catfish, then there is Superior Catfish. And then the 13th annual Palmer Home for Children Radiothon. That's coming up Thursday, July 10th. We'll be there once again Thursday, July 10th. That's here on SuperTalk Mississippi. That's when we do our best to raise funds for the children that are caught in unimaginable circumstances. That's why we need your help. You'll hear more about this as the date approaches. We're out of here today. Thanks so much for joining us. Back with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend and stay safe, and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.